Hello. It's been a while. I'm gonna turn off the light, but turn on the flash. There we go. It's been a while. It has been a while since I've made a long form video like this. Been like a hot minute. I know, I say that a lot. It's almost my catchphrase. More than time of recording. Yes, time of recording. I'm drinking liquid. Okay? If you want to know the specific liquid, it is clear, it is filled with ice, and it is called Sprite. Sprite, which is a form of pop, as they call it around here where I'm from. You know, I saw the purple people gave me a message. There was a girl, assuming it was a girl, I couldn't really tell, a human entity of sorts, or a human looking one. It was riding a bike and it had a light on its chest. And it was like coming closer, and then it started going in circles and circles and circles. Then it got off the bike. It parked its bike, got off the bike, started looking around, started going in counterclockwise circles, and then clockwise circles, and it just kept going around and around. And then it went on its bike, turned around, went in circles over and over again, and then went on the other street that most people don't go on unless, you live far away, And I mean that quite literally, USA in the 2026 World Cup lost to Belgium. The New World Order knows about this one, okay? I'm not a Earth nationalist. If you don't know what an Earth nationalist is, they're kind of like globalist, but the difference is that they're for pro-anarchy. Like they want an anarchy state where they want the whole world to just be like straight up anarchy, where there's no laws, there's no this or that. It's just people justifying whatever they want to justify, But maybe we can make with the exception of, like, say, hey, you can't have nuclear weapons or something, but again, with the exception of, like, weapons and bombs and stuff, that's pretty much it. You gotta justify whatever you want to justify. That kind of thing. There would be no law, there would be no rule. But the problem with anarchy is that, well, it's anarchy, There's no, hey, law to tell you, don't do this, do that, And the big problem is, well, if you have no law, then is there any point in rebellion or something? I don't know. But if I did live in that world, I would be committing quite a lot of crime, because there wouldn't be no crime, because that wouldn't be a thing. That wouldn't be legalized, because it wouldn't be legal to do so, Craziness. Crazy. You know? Like, who are they gonna call if they need reinforcements? Who is somebody going to call, you know, if they need cops? You know? What are you gonna do in that kind of situation? I don't know what I would do. I have no idea what I would do. Like, at all. Prisons would be empty. Jails would be empty. You know? Life is hard. That kind of thing. Man. Is it even worth it? Is it even worth it? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's very hard to say. Rats in a rubber room. A rubber room filled with rubber. You know? I was crazy once. Not gonna be crazy again. You know? Then there's another one. The man who sees the sea cannot see it. Then there's also your mom. THE, the. That's what that is. The word. The word, the. You know, I'm thinking of letting Michigan, the U.S. state of Michigan, become its own country and nation. Be fully self-sovereign and fully self-governing, you know? Be its own culture and society. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so that way all the tariffs can go away. Donald Trump or whoever's currently in president, it doesn't really matter as much, too much. Well, it kind of does matter. It is politics after all. But you know what I mean. Like, I'm more worried about Ohio existing than I am worried about whoever's the U.S. president, you know? Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to necessarily hate on you from being from Ohio, but, like, maybe a little bit of ethnic cleansing, but that's in genocide, in some sort of wars, many wars, for this kind of stuff. But maybe I'm going too overboard on this one, I don't know. You know? Anything else? Oh yeah, I had electricity off during my 4th of July. You know? For me. Anyway. And, it's crazy. It's freaking dicking crazy. You know? The electricity was off for the entire fucking time. All that day, all 24 hours. Okay? Because it started in July 3rd. And then that went through all July 4th and most of July 5th. you know? And so July 6th is the day, I had electricity, you know? I want to watch more movies and TV shows later. Maybe, just maybe, watch porn. I don't know about that one. You know, like porn can get in your head. It's not exactly the healthiest. Yes, yes, yes. I'm going strange. I'm going weird. Queered. Weird, queer and weird. Queered. Do you have Down syndromes? Do you know Syndrome from The Incredibles? You know what he was before he was Syndrome? He was Down syndrome. You know? That's how I would place it. There are many things that exist, but you are not one of them. Or are you? I don't know. Conquer the universe. Humans low-key need to conquer the universe. Maybe in the multiverse in about 1 trillion years or so, but just in general universe. Even if it's just like one little speck of the entire universe. You know, or barely any of a speck. At least we need to conquer more than one world. Because, I mean, we did with our own home world. Why can't we, conquer, say, another planet? And then once we conquer another planet, then we can go out to other planets and conquer those. Conquer and colonize those, you know? Become colonizers. I want to be a colonizer, you know? In outer space. Because this world has already been colonized. Colonized. And, man, that's what's happening. That's what's fucking happening. But man, oh man. Man, oh man, would I like to take over worlds, you know? Would I like to? Boy, would I like to? Boy, would I like to conquer other planets and take over other worlds. And maybe take entire planets and make them a prison world, you know? Maybe do something like that. Assuming we'll ever develop the technology, you know? But I don't think that kind of stuff is gonna happen in my lifetime, assuming I don't live that long, you know? All I know is that we have flying cars now, but nobody cares. You know? Nobody cares anymore because they said it over and over and over and over again. Oh, we're gonna get flying cars, we're gonna get flying cars, we're gonna get flying cars. Then we actually get flying cars, and all of a sudden it's like, where are the flying cars? You know? But to be fair, a lot of these flying cars are first generation. So, it's obviously just going to be like exclusively for certain type of rich people, And then it's just going to go to rich people in general. And then within 10 or 20 years, the first generation is going to get considered old, like an old 2000s or 2010s car. But, in 30, 40 years, maybe 50, eventually there will be enough time that passes where it will start to be seen as like how in my time we see 70s and 80s cars, and then eventually it will basically be a Model T of its time, from its time, It will basically be viewed as like the Model T of flying cars, whatever that car is, that flying car is, that kind of thing. But it's not just flying cars, it's also flying four-wheelers, And these four-wheelers, they're good at four-wheeling. But now they're making flying edition versions. Same thing with bikes and what is it called? Not a unicycle or a tricycle. I don't know. But yeah, we really could use flying cars right now. Especially self-driving ones. People try to shit on self-driving cars a lot, but it's like, there are just some people who, like me, prefer self-driving cars, Like, I would prefer it myself. I would prefer a self-driving car because, one, I can't really afford to get a car. Two, because of who I am, even if I didn't have all the problems, I still wouldn't be able to get a license because, me having the disabilities that I have, And if I didn't have those disabilities, maybe, just maybe, I would be able to drive a vehicle. But even then, it's like, these driverless cars are, at least in my opinion, superior. And a lot of taxi drivers, not all, don't get me wrong, if you're a good taxi driver, you're a good taxi driver, I'm just simply saying that there are a lot of taxi drivers that are just like, I don't like driverless cars, But then it's like, what if you get in an accident or something, and, you know, say it was caused by a person. You can't really do that with the machine because the machine does it perfectly almost every time. Yes, there is a rare accident, but usually they're over exaggerated by the news because if they actually let driverless cars, thrive in their society, guess what the fuck would happen? Oh no, car deaths would go down, you know? What a fucking shocker, you know? But yeah, robots don't have that distracted driving problem, and they're trained with specially made AI for it, so it will get better as it drives. It will get better as it improves. You know, and the thing about these kind of AIs is that they're trained specifically to drive places really well, and they try to put cones on it and stuff as if it's going to just solve every single issue, but it's like, dog, most, if not all, driving accidents and problems because of driving happen because of people, you know? Like, I'm sorry, but I have to stick with clankers on this one, you know? I used to really, really hate AI. I used to really hate AI because, why are they bringing this inferior garbage to me? And then I saw the anti-AI crowd. And then I'm like, oh, now it makes more sense why they do the AI stuff that they do. Don't get me wrong, I'm not the biggest fan of AI, the current way that's used anyway. But, I'd very much prefer AI over these people. It's unfortunate that I am preferring machine over these people, but because they could be just as easily AI as well. You know what I've noticed? That when people love an AI company, it's barely relevant. It doesn't thrive much. It doesn't make a lot of money. But when AI companies have these huge mainstream, big anti-AI haters, they become super rich. They become, super great. And I genuinely think that these AI companies and Earth governments, governments from Earth, I genuinely believe that they are using the anti-AI crowd to justify using AI, basically make the anti-AI crowd so extreme, so mainstream, that it gets a lot of people to rebel against these movements and start using the AI anyways, where they become so against AI that they become for AI. It's the whole, I use the stones to defeat the stones, or get rid of the stones, or whatever Thanos said, I don't remember. I use the stones to destroy the stones. Man, I feel like an actor when I do that. Where I'll stutter. And I'll just go, Goy. I don't think Epstein was the worst person on earth. I think there are many worse people than, say, Epstein or Benjamin Netanyahu could ever be. You know? There's a lot worse people out there. Let's be for real. Okay? I'm not a big fan of the movie Coraline. Like, don't get me wrong, I like the memes and stuff, because it's whatever. And I used to hate that movie because, well, it scared me and I watched it way too young as a kid. When I was a kid, anyway. And, then I got older, rewatched it, and I wasn't really scared of it anymore. But I just realized it wasn't crappy because it was, horror. It was crappy just because it was a shitty, awful movie, And I don't mean like awful in the sense like it's so shitty it's good. No. It's not extremely shitty. It's that oddly specific, in the middle annoying, where it hits you in the angsty spot. If you don't know what the word angsty means, it has many different ways of being spelled, but spell the word like ate, like you ate something, and shti, like steel T or triple T, if you want to be brain rot about it. But you stick these words together and you get ankshti, okay? You pronounce it like that, or you pronounce it, your own dialect version of it anyway. But you have to pronounce it just in that way, just letting you know. But basically what it means is you're annoyed in an oddly specific way. Okay? That's what it means. Angsty. Okay? But again, you don't have to spell it that exact way or anything like that. There's no mandatory thing. It's not one of those things where it's really written down, because it's not, even though it's part of day-to-day vocabulary for a lot of folks in the world, it's not really written down because nobody assumed you needed to. But it's just a word to describe something that annoys you in an oddly specific way. Or just a specific way in general, or just annoys you in general. But sometimes it can be used to represent anger or extreme emotion of some kind. But in a general sense, it represents just being annoyed, So it's sort of a Swiss Army knife of a word. But anyway, I think people like to feel more negative than they do positive. They either want to be positive too much, or they want to be negative too much, And even within the middle, there are two in the middle. You have too much of everything. You have too much of the least of everything. You have too much of too much, and you have the least of least, and you have the least of that, and you have the least of this, this and that, and this and this and this and this and this. You never really get to, how should I say, have something, Like, yeah, people are drinking and smoking less, but they're also having fun less. And I'm not saying drinking and smoking equals having fun, necessarily. But, it went from just being, a drinking and driving thing to being, a, bad habits thing to be, any habits, anything, really. Because people are so online now. People are so online, They're not... They're not like, offline, you know? I wish, I really, really wish that people could live in the offline world more, you know? Because if you ask me, you should use your digital life as a window to who you are, a vague window to who you are in real life, you know? And I intentionally say vague because everything is starting to become government controlled online. And for a long, long time, the internet was just well, it was a way to express different ideas, and groups that used to really, really hate each other started expressing it online and eventually realized, you know, we're not so different after all, or maybe we are actually different, but it's in these ways and not in those ways, you know? It made people less violent because they're putting all their energy into everything else, and then violence went down. It doesn't go down completely, and I think because of certain algorithms or whatever, you can actually become more violent, especially if you're constantly doom scrolling, or you're somebody who is like just all the time chronically online. And you might go, well, what can I do? I live in the middle of nowhere, or I live in the big city, or I live in this specific area, or I live where I live. I don't know where you live. I don't know what country you're from, what languages you do or don't speak. You know, what age you could be, what gender you could be, you know? I don't know what device you're watching this on, but I'm letting you know right fucking now, right now, you gotta find a thing to do in real life, you know? I do YouTube as a hobby, okay? I do YouTube as just something to do, just to do, because I got time for it, you know? But, I gotta be less chronically online as well, you know? Because I gotta really take my own medicine. And I know I say that a lot in a lot of my older videos, where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try to do IRL maxing, which I kind of did, and I kind of relearned it from going offline with my 4th of July experience, you know, like I said earlier in the video. But, I don't remember things well, unless I'm talking about a specific topic. Like, even when I talk about a specific topic, I can only last for so long. I can only talk about one specific topic, you know, for so long until I forget about it. That's why I usually, if I do talk about a specific topic, I talk about it with people who will remember it for like long periods of time throughout the day or night, so that way I can remember it. I don't like completely forget it. I just forget it to the point where I stop thinking about it, you know? But I do need to be like reminded constantly, you know, not like to abuse, but just reminded enough where it's like I occasionally or once a while get reminded of, hey, this or that, you know? There's a lot of things we could talk about, you know? Politics is very complicated. You know, there's a bajillion different groups. Same thing with religion and sexuality, you know? Oh, why does it have to be so complicated? Why does it have to be strange like this? I am wanted by the Swiss government for treason. Yeah, sure, bro. I mean, like 1 million people died or something, but like, terrorist? I'm a terrorist to you? For treason? For your treason? So when you do something bad, you acknowledge that maybe, and then it's either one of two things. They either do something bad and they acknowledge it, or they either do something bad and they blame it on something else, and then they go like that. But even when they do acknowledge it, it's your fault. It's either your fault or it's your fault. If you do something bad, that's your fault. If they do something bad, that's also your fault. Like, it just fucks you up so much, dog. Like, what am I supposed to do with that kind of information? I don't know. I just don't really know. Kalikos Kalakas Kalukas. Kalikavokabakadukadukas. You know, you ask me, Quebec should declare independence, because, it makes no sense for them to be a part of Canada. Like, Canada has only really existed since 1867. And even then, they weren't fully independent until 120 years later. 120 years later. Okay? Children, in recent years, I've noticed they're kind of losing their innocence. Children used to be of the innocent. What the hell happened? I'm not saying that they were some silly billy little guy, somewhere like that though, but I mean, like, you're gonna be your age. You're just gonna be your age. That's the time default. It just keeps ticking and ticking and ticking. You see how, like, these seconds, like, they're moving like that? Yeah. On your clock, there are seconds that are ticking like mine, but it goes on forever. It never stops. I mean, it gets slower every 50 to 100 years. 1 nanosecond or 1 second slower every 50 to 100 years. But it still ticks. It still freaking ticks. Always. Always, 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 always. And once humans do colonize the universe, what then? What the fuck are we gonna do? We've been on so many planets and so many worlds that it's fucking crazy, yo. I don't know what else to tell ya. It's just out there. Wouldn't that make Earth the Holy Land? The ancient Holy Land, the most ancient of holiest lands, I guess it would seem to be. I would say make the entire world one nation and one country, united under one world power, you know? Because that's what it would be. It would be a one world power. But that's assuming they successfully make it to Mars and back, you know? But here's the thing about the Mars mission. It's not the getting back to Earth that's hard, but it's getting to Earth to Mars that's hard. You know? Like being actually on Mars is really hard. And then they take you back. And then once you get back, you're just gonna have to live with whatever world or reality you end up being in. You know? Oh, holy shit. Holy fucking shit. If there is actual life on other worlds, ooh, man. Ooh, man. They're gonna start crashing out and shit. You know? But it's a high possibility that it will be the case, because scientifically speaking, it's proven that it's possible. Okay, it's possible that there could be life on other planets, including Mars. You know? Like, it's capable. But does it have life? We don't know that yet. You know? So there are a lot of planets out there that are very much capable of life. But the only real issue is there any life on it? You know? Like, that's what I would ask. That's what I would think about. I don't know, man. But, what does this have to do with children? Well, eventually those children will become adults. And then those adults, throughout whatever time period, maybe going throughout the universe, regardless, they might grow up to be very narcissistic, to become very narcissistic, excuse me. Or they might become really entitled and spoiled, you know? And just not all the way there. And the kids that grow up into men and women, they ain't doing shit. They ain't doing jack shit. You know, and then there's the whole transgenderism thing or whatever. But that's a story for another time. You know? I really think that, well, it's very much possible that, whatever teams are still left will win the World Cup. You know? The good old games, isn't it? if you ask me, you know how, like, when it comes to the major sports, like every country has their own team or whatever. Why can't they have that for every U.S. state? Why can't they have their own state team? You know? And I'm not talking college, I'm talking pro. You know? Like, if Israel can have one, I think fucking Wyoming could have one. Missouri could have one. Rhode Island could have one. You know? Delaware could have one. Wait, is Delaware a state or did I just make that up? No, it exists. It exists. Sorry, I was just taking my memory back. But Texas could have a team. Florida could have a team. California could have a team. Alaska could have a team. You know what I kind of find funny? Whenever they were doing these World Cup, oh, every country is this country except the United States is this one. It's like, motherfucker, you marking Alaska. Do you not realize that Alaska is part of the United States? Like, yeah, it was a weird, shitty map thing. It didn't really include Hawaii. But it's like, if they did include Hawaii, they would probably put that as a Belgium as well. You know? And they made Alaska have Belgium flag. Oh. Same thing but they did with Paraguay and Bolivia, not Bolivia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. How do you pronounce that? Herzegovina. Herzegovina. I don't know how you would pronounce that. I have crazy things to get to. You know, I have some IRL maxing business to attend to. So, yeah, man, woman, child, whoever the fuck you are, entity that is watching this video of some kind, you know, they're like, why do lesbian women have the highest divorce rates? You know the saying, ain't nobody hates a woman like another woman? That's why. Because women are women's biggest haters. You know, like, yeah, there was a patriarchy or whatever, but it's like, especially if that woman is more like them in, say, ethnicity or religion or political worldview, the more they are gonna be aggressive towards somebody like that. I mean, this doesn't apply to all women, but it does certainly apply to the majority, at least worldwide. You know, it doesn't apply to every single fucking woman who's ever existed. Obviously, if you checked out your Gram, your local nut job woman, it probably ain't gonna be the same case, you know, but, you know, there was a lot of wars that started because two women had an argument. You know, they're not exactly good. That's why they're not really known for being politicians, because, well, let's be for real. Politics is not exactly, like, yeah, there are women who are good at politics and understand politics pretty well, but it's one of those things where it's like, men are always going to just, for whatever reason, dominate in that. You know? It's just is what it is. And unfortunately, some people have not learned their lesson. Okay? Don't get me wrong, if you want to vote, you can vote. But being a politician, I don't know, man. if you're going to be professional with it, if you're the right person for the job, at least temporarily, because obviously you're not going to live forever, then yeah, you could perhaps maybe have a female politician. But in a general sense, not really. You know, like they don't need to having all of this. You know, if you ask me, maybe when it comes to certain topics, we should take women's rights to vote away. You know, but like say with stuff like abortion, oh yeah, maybe fine. You know, you can get that vote. But when it comes to, say, national elections, say who gets voted into office, yeah, no. And I'm not just saying that because it's dominantly left, okay? There are a lot of dipshit people out there that vote left that are men, okay? And I'm not saying that every single leftist or every single person that's left-leaning is, you know, a monster. Because I'm right-leaning, okay? I am a center-ish leaning libertarian individual, which, if you don't know, libertarianism is a right-wing ideology, you know? If they were, say, left-wing, they wouldn't call themselves libertarian per se. That's why calling yourself a left-leaning libertarian is not really a thing in politics, because, well, they don't really call themselves that, you know? It's like calling yourselves a right-wing communist. Like, okay, bro. Okay, that doesn't really make any sense, does it? You know? That kind of thing, because being communist is a far left ideology, you know? It is a very far left ideology. But yeah, they might call themselves, like, say, Antifa or something, you know? At the most. But, on the right wing, on the libertarian side particularly, you know what you have? ANCAP. Oh yeah, I'm a black and yellow guy. Black and yellow libertarian. Oh yeah. Bum, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum. And I can get away with crime as long as I don't get caught. At least that's what they say. You know, I don't know if that's actually true or not, because I've never really committed a crime before. I'm not really a criminal. I'm capable of it, but I'm too morally in the mind space for that kind of stuff. But sometimes, on very, very rare occasions, you might have to do something inferior to install something superior, if that makes sense. But saying stuff like that really, out of context doesn't really make any fucking sense anyway. Hell, even in context, what I just said probably doesn't make sense to any of fucking you, because, well, you're not me. You know? I think it's pretty much something that makes sense to pretty much only me, but, you know, that's how I think. At least currently. You know, I'm more of a in the day, like whatever the current day kind of guy, or current night is kind of guy type of person. You know, not necessarily in the immediate now, unless it's a life or death situation. But, you know, It's more of just like within that day, whatever's relevant that day, or that night. What's ever relevant in my now, That's just how I am. I am, man. What if fashion trends just don't really change? Like for the next, I don't know, 100 years. Oh boy, that's gonna be fucking confusing as shit. Because you could see something from 100 goddamn years ago and still think it's new, But yeah, I genuinely believe that, say there are certain individuals that just are insane like me, What you guys think about, what's it called? Polyamory? Where it's like one guy has 2 wives in the same marriage. Back in my day, that's what we called bigotism. That's what we called a bigot. That's what a bigot meant. But then it got distorted and changed and shifted. It's like ever since 2016, everybody just meant bigot means you're a Republican. Like that's basically how they dictate it. Now, I'm not a biggest fan of Republican, but look, I'm gonna be fucking honest with you. They ain't no goddamn bigots, normally, okay? Maybe with the exception of Trump, but even then it's like, you're basically just using it as a buzzword, It's like people who call everybody racist, people who call everybody sexist. Even if you are somebody like that, you have to fucking acknowledge that there's something wrong here when you use it like a buzzword. Because that's what it's became now. A fucking buzzword. Nothing more than a fucking buzzword. And that pisses me off so goddamn much. I just... Twin. That's fucked up. Like... Damn. God damn. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. So, good morning, good day, good evening, and good night. Okay, I am out of here. Okay. Bye now.